Today's story comes from Cedric Bakespeare. Hello, Brent. Here's the story. But first, a little about me. I'm a 21-year-old black male attending college who grew up in the church and know the gospel enough to convert souls. However, I still do worldly things, working on it though. Ever since I graduated high school, God has been steadily opening my eyes, granting me wisdom, discernment, and understanding unlike anyone of my race and age, especially considering my generation's mindset. I figured out pretty early I wasn't normal when somehow I became phobic of alien greys. I don't recall an abduction or anything, but for some reason they struck fear into me from the age of 5 until about 18 when I discovered their true agenda in nature. It was so severe when I was young that I would sleep with the light on and open my eyes every 20 seconds when dozing off, just to make sure an alien wasn't standing in front of me, LOL. Thankfully, I grew out of that, but I never understood why I felt so strongly about them when no one else in my family believed in them. So I just blamed it on my pops watching the UFO mysteries on the History Channel when I was young. Teenage years, I had a couple of out-of-body experiences where I would walk towards a light only being stopped by my conscience saying, "I'm not ready to die," and then jumping up out of my sleep to find myself suffocating somehow. Late teenage years, I began to see these dark, orange, reddish orbs in the sky that would appear as a flare, disappear and reappear with triple as many orbs, once in my hometown and the other in Myrtle Beach, where I was standing on the beach at night staring at the ocean horizon when I saw 3 orbs rise out of the water from afar, make a slant formation and disappear. There was a family friend who witnessed it also. I gave that little background just to show that I'm not ignorant to the mysteries of the spirit realm. Okay, this story takes place in Georgia. I don't want to give the exact name of the cities out because I don't want to cause any alarm in those areas. But I'll tell you, however, April 2013, a little over a year ago, about 3 o'clock on a partly cloudy day, was me and a friend whose hometown neighbored my hometown, and we were heading back to our hometowns for the weekend. He asked if I could drop him off, and I agreed. My friend is a very severe sinner. It's like a 2-hour drive from the city of our college university. So halfway through the trip in Milledgeville, Georgia, next to Georgia College and State, we stopped at a 4-way intersection. Immediately upon stopping at the light, I noticed someone walking up the street from about 100 meters away. What caught my attention was his walk. It was robotic-like. I didn't say anything to my friend at this point and continued to bob my head to the music we were listening to and watching the light. I glanced at this person again as he proceeded to walk closer. At this point, I noticed that the person appears focused, not turning his head left or right, only looking straight, like he was focusing on his unusual walk or something. At this point, I ruled him as a person with disabilities, so I tried my best not to stare and looked back at the light, waiting for it to turn green. I pass through this city all the time, and the average I'm at this light is about 30 seconds, but this day it felt like an eternity. So it's broad daylight at a busy intersection with other people out and about and whatnot, and I'm wondering if anyone else is seeing what I'm seeing. So time passes, and this guy is finally about 10 meters out, and I can now get a better look. What I see puzzles me. He had a muscular structure with a small head. It had on what appeared to be a small backpack and some jeans. His skin is very pale, and his walk was unworldly. His hair appeared as lightning, like a grayish silvery, almost like it had a glow to it. His hairstyle was like an old man, being he was bald at the top, with a light density of curly type hair around his head, almost like a clown. His face was like a baby face or childlike in nature, and this is what had me puzzled because nothing was normal about this guy. His body was disproportional to his head. Steadily walking forward, this guy haven't swiveled his head not even once. He continued walking, and once he got parallel to my vehicle, he turned his head, looked at me in the eye, and continued walking. I haven't said a word to my friend while sitting at the stoplight until this point, but rather after the guy looked at me in the eye, my friend covered his mouth in amazement, turned to me and said, "What the F? Did you see that?" I replied by saying, "Yes, I saw his eyes. I thought I was the only one paying the being any attention." The being had soulless dark eyes. It was like he purposely wanted me to see them. Right after the light turned green, I didn't think much more about it as I continued to drive. At this point, I had ruled it as some genetical disorder some poor guy had. All the remainder of the way, I grew increasingly tired. I dropped my friend off, and a storm began to build up. It was storming by the time I got home, and I was completely drained, so I went to bed and laid down. During my slumber, sleep paralysis gripped my body. I then found myself in a dark place, still laying on my bed with a light which radiated like a candle light, which either came from behind me or my body. I was staring at the back of the head of whatever lay beside me with its head turned. It then turned its head. It looked just like me, except it had dark, soulless eyes, just like the being I had seen earlier that day. We had like a staring contest, telepathic engagement. This face, which looked like mine, began to look more and more sinister as I stared in its eyes, to the point where it looked like a straight-out demon. During this whole engagement, it's like I instinctively knew what this being which appeared as me was, and we were speaking without words during the whole stare battle. The little I remember went like this. I was like, "I'm not afraid of you." The creature spoke a language I did not understand, but it was just full of negative energy, whatever it was saying, but somehow I perceived it as calling me a liar, saying I was weak and that I can't defeat him, that kind of stuff. I then began to feel the life come out of my body. I tried to look away at this point, but I couldn't. The creature was staring me down. I was for sure I was going to die at this point. I then began to yell the name, "Jesus, Jesus, Jesus," with the remaining life I had, and the moment I did that, I broke the trance and woke up to find myself suffocating to death somehow. Scared half to death, I ran to the front door trying to get outside so I could get a breath of fresh air. But my mom was just getting home from work and was standing at the front door as I opened it, saying, "Boy, what's wrong with you? You look like you've seen a ghost or something." Wish I could have seen my facial expression. LOL. The storm had passed and the sun was beginning to break through the clouds. The end. This is Cedric's analysis. Analysis. I concluded the being as a fallen angel because it was stronger than regular demons. It had the ability to appear as a humanoid in flesh and to summon demons and send them after souls, which I suspected it did to me. Over the next year, I began to notice patterns from stories my friends had told me about strange humanoid-like creatures. One where my godbrother and his mom was just getting back to town one late night, where he noticed some strange hooded creature which he explained had a unworldly robotic walk. It was like 2 a.m., and his mother told him, "We have to pray," as if she already knew what the being was. She's in her late 50s. My other friend, who was raising a lot of hell and drinking excessively, says he was out one night around 3 a.m. when he came across an intersection not too far from my mom's house. He reported a creature with a trench coat type wardrobe, a hat, and glowing type eyes. He actually told me this before I had my encounter, but I thought he was just being, pardon my language, a scary ass dude to all the hell he had raised around that time. But as my understanding grew, I called him last week and asked him about the experience again. I then drew one distinct similarity. All these encounters occurred at a four-way intersection, crossroad. The Bible says nothing is new under the sun. I then started to recall myths from blues and rock and roll tales where guys would sell their souls at crossroads. I don't know why they like to hang out there, but I'm beginning to think that a crossroad or an X kind of thing or a cross can easily create portals to other realms and dimensions. I know the masonry parallel pillars represent some type of portal. There, there's this very, very good documentary, the only one of its kind, that tells of interdimensional beings, and this guy actually has a definite way to capture them. It'd blow your mind. I'll post a link on your page. I would love for you to do a video for this story above. I like your art and your storytelling. A friend of mine named Stuart Sensory, however you pronounce that, well, he called and I talked to him on the phone. I was going to do an interview with him on a story that he had that will be on an upcoming video, possibly. But one of the stories he told me was about being in a car and having a clown looking person. He even sent a picture and it looked really similar to the one I drew. But he was in a car at an intersection and this clown looking guy came after him and his friend and slapped up onto the window and freaked them out and scared them. And they're really big guys, like 6'5", huge men. They aren't apt to be scared about many things, but this really shook both of them up. They were in a car like Cedric, and bam, there was a clown-like figure that perceived to be a demon to them. It didn't seem to be a human. I don't know why people would say, hey, this doesn't seem human to me, other than if there was really something going on. So this thing slaps up on the window and they needed to turn around because they went by it and they thought, well, if we go this way, we're going to have to go a couple hours out of our way to get back to where we need to go. And they both were disputing on whether to turn around or not because they were scared to even drive back by. And they ended up turning around and trying to get back through, and they were looking for this being or this man, creature, whatever it was, but it really had shook them up and scared them because it was not normal. Its eyes wasn't right. It was just extremely scary. And they ended up getting through there, and I think that he said that he saw it. It was coming at the car again, and then that may be when it slapped up on the window, but it really scared them horribly bad, and it was really reminding me of Cedric's case. Maybe there's something to these crossroads. I don't know. But I can tell you this, when people say that it's a demon, and they feel that it's a demon, and they get several things that happen. Stuart also mentioned stuff about these red looking orbs that Cedric mentioned at the very beginning here. These red orbs are beings. They are something. The one that Stuart saw, he said, was a fireball. It was not like just a little light of some kind that was shining and could be mistaken for or he mistook it for, orb. He said it was a ball of fire, and it was posing as a relative after a relative had died or something like that, and it stood out to him as a paranormal phenomenon. But we had these clown looking creatures showing up at crossroads, or even other type angelic fallen angel type beings and demonic activity. Stewart ended up having a apartment about burned down, melted the glass on this table and everything. And the fire department was called and said, I don't know how this could have happened and your room not burned down. It would have to get 1200 degrees to melt that glass. So I believe Cedric, and I believe Stewart, and I think that there was definitely a devil that went down to Georgia. And fortunately, Cedric lived, and he was able to tell us about the story. So thank you, Cedric, and thank you also there, Stewart. And I ask that you all subscribe, comment, and share these videos, please. And I will see you on the next video.